What's up, everybody? I'm Dave from Saint Vitus, filling in for Artie tonight. We got Cheddar from Candy on Age of Quarantine. Want to thank everybody for hanging out and just, helping us through this time. Doing all right? All right, here we go. We got Cheddar from Candy on the line. Hub Book shows in Hartford. Cheddar, brother, what's up?
How's it going? I'm chilling. How are you?
Drink a little wine. We're going to talk about music.
Love it.
It's going to be a good thing. How are you doing?
Good, man. How about you?
Thanks for coming on the Age of Quarantine. I'm doing all right, man. Just fucking hanging out in my house like I'm supposed to be doing and fucking talking to you. So
love it.
Things are fucking okay.
Sick.
So, Ched, we're going to just start it off the same way that I do every time, which is basically, if you weren't at home, you know where you'd be now.
Just actually, I guess I'd be in Australia right now, I think, or Southeast Asia somewhere.
Oh, wow, Australia. Fuck, with which band?
Candy. We were supposed to do I think a month tour of Japan, Australia, and Southeast Asia. And obviously that couldn't happen. So here I am.
Sounds like the trip of a lifetime for sure to get over to the other side of the world. And hopefully we can have those kinds of activities resume, fucking sooner than later.
Dude, I hope so. I've been honestly going to Japan. I mean, all those places was we were so excited to go to, but being able to tour Japan was literally my goal since the first band I was ever in. So not being able to do that was a little disappointing, but it'll just be better when we get to do it,
Absolutely, and a little bit of perseverance goes a long way. So
for sure.
In this game, my friend. So yeah, speaking of your first band, all that kind of stuff, we kind of just like to dive into the musical history of the people that we're talking to. So, let's go back to just the earliest. When did you start just kind of really getting interested in music at an early age? What did you have, an older brother? Did your parents play music a lot around the house?
Yeah, I don't have any siblings, but my dad is very he loves music. He listens to all kinds of stuff, really not exactly so much stuff I listen to now, but he's just one of those people with a crazy eclectic taste. And I think that rubbed off on me, and I just could relate to how much he just vibed music at certain times. He just loves it. So I think that rubbed off on me. And then I didn't really start playing music until I was in 8th grade, and I started playing guitar. And then from there, it was just a year or two later, I joined a band and just was pushing to just play. I didn't even care about playing shows. I want to play guitar. I want to play music with other people. And then, I didn't care about shows, but other people in the bands did. And then it was just a spiral. And then it became touring, and then it became music and whatever. So.
Sure. As far as wanting to become a guitar player specifically, was there anything that made you choose yes, guitar, that's my weapon?
Yeah, my dad plays guitar. He always had an acoustic guitar in the house, and he would play it. And I don't know, I just at a certain point, I guess I picked it up and I really don't remember the actual learning. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It was there, and then I just started messing with it and liked it,
Yeah, for real. So it's just kind of one of those things where obviously, you just took to it. It's in the family. It kind of seems like it was in the blood and stuff like that. What were your kind of earliest experiences with just kind of getting involved in punk and hardcore and kind of that kind of music?
I'm trying to think I had a friend down the street who's still one of my best friends, who me and him were both into weird stuff. We liked him and shit like that when we were in 5th grade, just we didn't know what genres were. We were just we like wearing black and being alt, I guess, and somehow he found out about hardcore. I honestly don't know to this day, but he convinced my parents to take both of us to a show, and it was a Brace War show. And back in a time where shows like that were fucking insane in Richmond, and ended up in a huge fight, and my parents like dragged us out, and we were like, you can't go to shows for a long time. But it was funny. We were in sixth grade, I think.
You got into a fist fight at your first show.
I didn't. No. But the other people at the show did. It was like a really packed show, and no, I absolutely not. I was terrified.
But so that was it. So a Brace Horse show, and then that energy obviously had a great impact on you and stuff like that. And so you were just at that time, was it like, oh fuck, like what is this? Like this is what I've been looking for.
Pretty much. I wouldn't say it was necessarily like this is what I'm looking for, because I was just like, what the fuck? I definitely connected in a way because I've always liked like the extreme version of all like art. Like I always want to go deeper, but yeah, my parents weren't that about it at first because of that, and then so it took a minute after that, probably like a year or so, I didn't go to another show. But then after that, for whatever reason, like about a year later, it just clicked, and from then on, it was just, I was probably like a sophomore in high school, and it was just like, or I guess it was a few years later, but at that point, around sophomore year of high school, it just clicked, and I was just going to hardcore shows from then on out.
So, you know, obviously you said Richmond, is that where you're from originally, that born and raised?
Yeah, born and raised. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So obviously, you know, a pretty legendary scene down there as far as, you know, everything from an bar to, you know, tons of bands and stuff like that. What were kind of, you know, some bands that kind of were maybe local and like inspired you? You know, sometimes when I've had these conversations before, it's not even like the biggest band, it's like the band that your friends are in, or, you know.
The first thing I connected to was Down to Nothing. Like, I don't know what it was. It was the right mix of like really aggressive, but like, I don't want to say positive lyrics, but just, I guess, like empowering lyrics and just like the straight edge thing. And I just like connected to that crazy. And then the next band that I'd say that had a really big impact on me was the band Naysayer. Mm-hmm. They like took me on the first like long tour I ever went on, just like sell merch for them. And that was honestly life-changing. And those two bands are probably the most, like, when I was a kid, before I knew anything really about hardcore, the ones I connected to the most. And then, you know, you find stuff like Avail and like Wasted Time and like just other sides of it, which is, yeah.
I definitely tend to think, though, when it comes to kind of bigger changes as far as like any one person's life and like what you're doing, a lot of times it's people who are pretty close to you who are like doing things that like inspire you to be like, fuck, I can do that. I can get into a band, right? Like if homies and Naysayer, like come with us, check out what this sort of traveling vagabond kind of vibe is.
Yeah.
Once you pick that up, you're like, whoa, if my friends can do it, I can do it, you know?
Definitely.
For bands like On the Might of Princes and, you know, other, you know, kind of Long Island hardcore, you know, bands. Obviously, The Clash Show was a big band at the time, and other things like that inspired me to go, hey, I want to go out and I want to try and play music. Do shit.
For sure. Like with hardcore especially, I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, what's really cool about it, and this is what everybody says, and it's pretty obvious, but like every level of band, like big, small, like whatever, can have such an impact. And some of the bands that have such impacts on a specific scene or city are not necessarily the bands that like people would name first, you know what I mean? But like, it's just such a small community that it doesn't really matter like how much you tour or like how many people like you. If you can just get people in your city into it, it can be a super impactful thing.
Definitely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, you know, Candy is, you know, done a lot of great things in the hardcore scene and beyond and stuff. Obviously, you guys have had like this really amazing kind of, you know, rise within everything. Can you just bring me to bringing that band together? Because one of the things that I think about often is these bands that together members are all over the fucking place. And Candy is definitely like that. It feels like a real postmodern band.
Yeah, that's definitely not the case by choice, but it's just like how it had to be. But everybody in Candy, yeah, we're all from different areas, but we had all like just from, I think all of us for a specific period of time were really just as interested in touring and traveling as making music. And through that, we all kind of met each other. You know, I met the guys from the dudes in Candy that were in Malfunction, and did tours with them. And I started filling in with them. And then, you know, Steve was in like New Jersey bands like Heavy Chains and stuff like that. And he started filling in with us. And it just kind of became like a little clique of the people that were down to go on tour, like pretty much 24/7. And then those bands didn't really work out. But we really wanted to just focus on like, we were like, well, if we can't tour or whatever, at least we can just make music together. And then our focus all shifted to that. And it was like, for a minute, it was like, we'll drive back and forth between Richmond and Buffalo, which is pretty miserable in retrospect. But we were doing that, and then just to practice. And then we just started, the focus really became just writing the music. And that's really what it is still. We don't see each other that often except on tour. But we talk, all of us talk every day about writing music pretty much. So
yeah, that's kind of interesting how you guys almost like you organize it around lifestyle, almost like predominantly to start like, hey, if you're down to do this, I'm down to do this, and I really want to pick my participation up a little bit.
For sure.
And continue to do that. And obviously, you know, there's this Down to Nothing has a big connection from New Jersey and everything like that.
Yeah.
Almost using the touring of other bands to kind of meet like-minded people, right?
Yeah, definitely. And just the way that like the people older than me in Richmond, like connected with other cities and like scenes. Like, I mean, pretty much as soon as I got into hardcore, I noticed that. And I just thought that was so cool. It was like, oh, you can like have friends that you can go stay with in New Jersey or Buffalo or like anywhere. Like, I just thought that was so sick, you know, just like it's a cool like resource to have in your life, you know?
Yeah, it's one of the things, honestly, that I think makes musical life like really rewarding and stuff. You know, I had Koya here, and we were talking about stuff, and you know, dude, I got people who I like love and like know from Brazil to Japan to Miami, you know, wherever. So you know, they really paved the way for an international hardcore scene.
For sure, and that honestly is like, I mean, I think everybody knows that like touring is a big part of hardcore and stuff like that, and obviously a rewarding part of touring is getting to see other places. But even like to this day, like just meeting somebody new in like the UK or like Sweden is like, those are just the two places where I've met people the most recently who I just like connected with, and it's just like, it's so cool that, you know, music can facilitate that and hardcore can facilitate that.
Totally, I could not agree with you any more than that. Besides, obviously, you know, music and skateboarding has quite a big influence in Candy. Can you talk about that a little bit and like skateboard culture and what it's sort of given you guys?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm actually probably the least qualified person in the band to talk about it because anytime I've ever skated, I've just like busted my ass. I suck at it, and I was never good at it. But the other dudes, like, a lot of the time on tour in the States is finding places to skate and just sitting there. It's like a huge, it's sitting there for me. They're active, you know, and like doing shit. But I guess I should. Honestly, I try to find literally anywhere else to be when they're skating because I don't know. I just want something to do, you know. But for them, I think it's like a huge, I don't know. I went through a little phase where I tried to do it just because it was like such a cool way to like stay physical and like have fun on tour. And then for the other dudes in the band, they're always showing you shit in like skate world, like in terms of graphics and like shit like that. That is just like, I think there's a lot in common with like how kids get into skating and how they get into punk. It's like, just like you're just like this 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, and you like just need something to do. So you either start going to shows or you start like hanging out with your friends in a parking lot skating. And I think everybody in the band, I hate to speak for them, but I think that the skating had as much of an impact on them as punk did.
Yeah, I think they're really one and the same. Actually, I saw Chase in the comments here, and he likes to skate. And I talked about, I mean, skateboarding for me was, I mean, I listened to a lot of bands for the first time ever because of skateboard videos, that nature.
Yeah.
Aesthetic influence for sure, you know, like I always thought that like Zero looked so cool, or like Toy Machine and Ed Templeton's artwork and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like Candy I feel like this vibe that's analogous to those things. You know what I mean? The way
Yeah.
you yourself.
I definitely think to this day, like some of the coolest, like some of the most talented, like visual artists or like designers, like come from skate world. Like it's, I don't know, something about skating like really like fuels creativity. And to this day, like I don't know.
Yeah. I think that there's a bit of a connection there because, you know, skateboarders and punks and hardcore kids, you know, we're all used to just like making shit for ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's an obstacle or, you know, like, hey, you know what, like I'm going to go, I see something a different way. That set of stairs to me is completely different than to like 99% of other people. That set of stairs is like something else.
Yeah, and you can just succeed.
Creativity to see that, right?
Yeah, and you can just with like punk and skating, you can succeed without parents or like school or any kind of infrastructure like that, you know?
Sure, absolutely, for sure. So with Candy, how, you know, I first heard of the band through our good mutual friend Ricky Singh, and Ricky put out your first EP on Flat Spot, right?
Yeah, our demo, yep, on tape.
Yeah, and he was like, dude, check this out. I think that you'll like it. And I've known Ricky since he was probably like 15 years old. You know, I'm a little bit older than Ricky. And Ricky, if you know anybody you know is watching out there who doesn't know, Flat Spot Records, a really fantastic hardcore label, always has like young fucking heat, young fire, and you know, and that's where I found Candy, and you know, I was like, wow, this is really kind of on its own level and visually really on its own level. Could you just talk about what it was like to start putting together that first EP and how linking up with Ricky happened and how that all worked?
Yeah, linking up with Ricky was like not a crazy in-depth story. I think he just hit us up and was like, I think we had put the demo out online and he was like, can I put it out? And we were just like, yeah, fuck yeah. Cause like we've all known Ricky for a long time and like obviously Flat Spot has done like amazing releases. So that was just kind of a no-brainer at that point. And coming together, I'm trying to think back to, cause the demo honestly seems so far away.
Yeah, how does like a Candy song get written with everybody being all over the fucking place?
Honestly, I just like dive into as many weird influences as I can at home and start making them on my computer and just start writing the songs out, like programming the drums and shit, making demos, and then just sending those to the band and taking their feedback and just building it from there and just trying to hone in further and further through their opinions and just like sitting in a fucking bedroom, sitting in my bedroom.
So you're really sitting there kind of constructing, and then you go out and they're kind of like a sounding board for the things that you're kind of doing, and then you go back and do more. You're quite the orchestrator, man. I mean, to have the vision to create all those parts and do everything, that's pretty intense.
That's how it's like formulated, and that's like I'd say the beginning phases, and then we start to. I'm actually in Richmond right now because tomorrow we're gonna start demoing some new stuff, and so that's kind of another phase of like there's the early phase of just kind of writing the songs out, and then after that phase we start demoing the songs in person. You know, we all make the time to be in the same place and do that, and that adds a lot. It adds like the human element of like hearing. That's where everybody, I think, really gets to that's where everybody kind of becomes a part. And then we all listen to those demos, and then we eventually go actually record it. And that's how the process has been, I think, for every release so far.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty wild. I mean, it's really interesting because, you know, especially in times like these, been talking to a lot of different people who do write songs in a lot of different ways. But you guys already, I think, have like a way that's sort of advantageous even while you're away. You guys can
Definitely.
Good way, right?
For sure. I mean, this is like so fucked to say, but the lack of distractions that is like a shitty byproduct of this situation has come out in a sort of positive for at least being able to focus on new music. I'd say that's like the one positive right now for the silver lining for us is that like, well, there's nothing else we can fucking do. We got to stay in the house. We can't interact with anybody. So like, okay.
Oh, are you there, Chad?
You Yeah, yeah. You got me?
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, a byproduct, obviously, nobody wants this, but there are things that kind of come to light and come to the forefront. And I feel like the same thing. I'm hearing everybody either trying to figure out different ways to write, maybe ways that they haven't tried before, and that's leading to
Yeah,
maybe new experiments, new ways of going about stuff, which is kind of interesting, right? You have
yeah,
certain limitations. So now what's that going to lead you to, you know, because of that? And the other thing is just, yeah, it's a different time. It's like, well, we can't go on the road. We can't play. We can't do that. That obviously occupies a lot of our lives. So fuck it. We're gonna just write, and make a lot. So
for sure. I mean, dude, I mean, I'm sure, I know you feel this too, but it's like, what does, it's so hard to make plans with music related things right now because it's like, what is the world gonna, when is the world gonna like start making collective decisions for when shows can happen and when tours can happen and when you can get back into a studio and shit? It's, I don't know, it's kind of throwing a big question mark on everything, which you
yeah,
probably feel more than anything.
absolutely. I think that, you know, there's certain folks, obviously, you know, from my experience and all the conversations we're having here, like I had Jacob from Converge on, you know, and they're like, we get, you know, we all live relatively, you know, close to one another. So, like, we get in the room and we play. And
Yeah,
now Anchor has got City, and then we do it. But now it's kind of like we've never had to yeah, sometimes we send stuff around, but jamming it out is really like a super big key for us. And then there are people, you know, like Boy Harsher, who make electronic music. They're sitting at home and they're making, and they're able to make everything. So it's a really difficult thing, and I think it's just a wait and see kind of approach. You know, I mean, this is what we have to do with the bar as well too. You know, I've never really had to ask the governor of New York if I could do something before. So
yeah. I can't imagine. I feel for you, man. Like, and I feel for all the venues, like especially just any like anywhere that has a brick and mortar fucking location right now. It's like, dude, people have to come in to function, and I don't know. I'm preaching to the choir right now for sure, but I feel for you.
yeah, no, but it's fine. I mean, you know, people ask me stuff all the time. You know, it's you know, it's a conversation, right? And it's like, I think the reason why, though, a lot of ways, one, they know that I'm very involved with Saint Vitus, my place, with, you know, my friends, and we've been doing this thing for so long. But I think that they miss it. They miss being able to go to shows. They miss being able to be. They miss them pretty acutely.
Yeah,
Which is kind of interesting because there's a lot of things that you might not miss during this time, but these are things that we're missing. And that's what we're talking right now, is to kind of fill in maybe some of this gap as we're kind of moving forward. And what we're really lucky about is that people like yourself are staying industrious in this time and you're going to give us all this good music to kind of listen to.
yeah,
Speaking of Andy, just going back to that for a little bit, obviously, with new music and stuff like that, you drop the EP, and then I think it's on the next record that everything started to kind of take shape for you guys a little bit more. What was the moment where you were just like, dude, this shit's kind of like, shit's happening. There's a lot of people coming to our show. Things are starting to go down. You know what I mean? Or maybe it was a peer or someone you looked up to. It's like, hey, your band's dope, you know?
yeah. That's like hard because that was like it like took a second to realize that we might, I would just say like we got the opportunity to do things that we had never gotten to do before, and that realization process like took a second. You know what I mean? Like one big like moment for that was when we did a tour with Ekulu and Abusive Power, and like the show, every show was just so fucking cool, and there was like a good amount of people at every show, and the vibe was really good, and that was just like, it was like two-ish weeks, and just every show was solid. And I've done so many tours where one show out of 2 weeks is good. You know what I mean? And it was like, that was like just a really like, that was really encouraging. Honestly, playing that, the show that we set up together with you guys,
Oh, yeah.
the first show that we like headlined at Saint Vitus, like that shit sold out. And like, then the reaction that we got that was another moment of just like, damn, like this is like on another level than what I'm used to, you know? I'm sure it's not like crazy for a lot of people.
Going down, man. That was
like,
a wonderful night.
Yeah, and then honestly, when we started talking to like Relapse about doing a record, that was just like, I would say, regardless of the fact that it ended up working out and we're going to do records with them, it was just kind of flattering because they generally focus on more metal stuff rather than hardcore, it seems. And I've kind of like noticed that label from afar for a really long time, and just for them just to see that they could like appreciate something and what we were doing was like a cool moment, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, huge heritage people that's had everyone from like Mastodon, Baroness to nothing.
Yeah.
A very eclectic, very cool. Kind of talk about the eclecticism as kind of like a banner you guys kind of to wave. It seems like, and obviously there's a couple of tracks, you know, in the Candy full length, and you know, Superstar's got a little bit. It's a little EP shorter, but there, you know, there's a range there, and you could tell that the band's kind of exploring or kind of pushing further and stuff like that. What's the kind of the focus on that, and not just kind of settling on like, hey, we're gonna do this thing and that's what we do? Why the focus on eclecticism?
I would say the main goal with Candy musically is it's just a hardcore band. Like that's what we want to be. But I think our thought process is that we want to try to kind of update hardcore a little bit to still be a hardcore band, but do what maybe some of those bands in the early 80s did, and take in, like, if you think about Bad Brains or whatever, they didn't have the definition of hardcore and the rule book of hardcore when they started. So they were listening to other music and then just arrived at what fast, heavy, all that shit without kind of rules of like what they need to be influenced by. And I think that's how we kind of approached Candy. Like, it is a hardcore band, but I don't think we can't be influenced by I don't know, fucking Sonic Youth or something like that, because they have abrasive parts, they have effective parts, they have, and when you think of like the term like heavy, that means that it's such a broad term. And I think, you know, sometimes I listen to fucking Sonic Youth and I'm like, damn, there's something heavy here. So we try to take like, use those broad terms and see how they apply in places that aren't just hardcore, and then maybe see how that can interact with hardcore. And that's where the eclecticism comes from. It's really just to kind of enhance and just not just try to sound like we were a band that started in 2000 and the only music that there was for us to reference was music before that.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really like poignant thing, and oftentimes I think that one of the things that I don't like is when you can tell that a band is just filling in the colors. It's like, okay, if we throw this in here and that in here, and you add this plus this, then we should be okay. And then we're that shit never really is good. It's not great. Some of it might be good, but it's never great.
Yeah.
If you're to be great, I think that you need to be searching for more. You need to reach past and try and like go where your heroes wanted to go a little bit further. And I think that what you were saying about Bad Brains is true, and I think they did it a couple of different times, right? Like the way they changed and they grew and followed their instinct more than anything else. I think it's a very important part of that band's history, and any like really good forward-thinking band's history, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a place for purism and traditionalism for sure, like in every genre. Like, when done well, that can be super cool, you know? And I like a lot of shit that in hardcore and metal and all that shit that's modern and tries to be super purist, but that's not that's not the project we're trying to do.
Sure.
So.
And I think that that's just important to know that definition, you know? I mean, I'm sitting here with a Chucky and the Gang shirt on, like drinking wine, loves Inclination, that, you know, great straight edge hardcore band that to me does that thing so well. I'm like, crap, this is like Earth Crisis Champion, like this is the purest of like heavy straight edge hardcore, right? Like, this is amazing. And so, yes, to speak into what you were saying, traditionalism can be really good sometimes. but I think you need those bands to try and keep pushing things forward. So I'm going to ask you a question. That being said, we've spoken a couple of times how much you love Bjork.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's, a great, obviously immense musician. But what are a couple of influences that are kind of outside of the hardcore realm that you could share with us a little bit besides Bjork, because I know about it?
Shit, let me try to think of some good ones rather than, I mean, I could reference some like black metal shit or something like that, but I mean, that's kind of obvious because that's like extreme music too. All right, since you referenced Bjork, her ex-boyfriend or some shit, Goldie, you fuck with that dude?
Oh, I love Goldie, hell yeah.
I was listening to fucking Inner City Life. Is that what the record's called? Or Timeless?
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to that record a ton when we were working on our first 7-inch because it has this like, I don't know, dude. Like, it's cool. It's chill to listen to. It's like kind of danceable, but it has this crazy like the whole inner city vibe, and he really, I feel like, was pushing this kind of like dystopian thing with like his experience living in an inner city. I would guess. I don't know a ton about him, but his shit was fucking. It's super punishing in a certain way, but it's also really listenable, and I found that like super appealing to.
All those drum and bass dudes also have a really great way of creating like a lot of atmosphere in their tracks, and then therefore grime and that style of hip hop and stuff. There's a lot of like dark pads and atmospheres and just like the rhythms of it. Obviously, it has this Jamaican influence, but then there's like, I think because dance music and electronic music is so prevalent that there's a lot of all these like really rich pads that are just so heavy and moods that are like a whole lot of.
I mean, this isn't really anything that's like influenced any music that we have out right now, but I don't know. You're probably familiar with this. There's like a label called Bank Records.
Oh, I love Bank, dude, man. Dude. Shout out to Bank, man.
That shit is like, I kind of really, dude, I had been familiar with a few of the artists on that, but I just started really diving into it and like kind of trying to see some patterns of like, I don't know, finding more music like that. Some of that shit is legitimately like, you want to talk about the term heavy, like it's fucking insane to listen to. It's like a real like pounding in your head, but it's still listenable, and that's like it understandable, and like there's something appealing to it still, and that shit I love.
So for people listening who might not be aware, Bank is an electronic music label based out of Brooklyn, run by an awesome dude named John. His performance name is Entro Sinestre. He's amazing, but a lot of really amazing people put out records on there. My friend Soren Roy put out a record on there, and he originally came from the New York City punk scene, was in Rosenkopf and stuff like that. So there's definitely always been connections between these sort of different worlds. And I love going to clubs and listening to that kind of music, but I've made heavy music traditionally for most of my life. So the way those things, even what you listen to, and it just kind of weaves into your subconscious, and how it can never come out is always kind of
Dude, some of those like some of the there's one release, Slave to Society. Have you listened to that? Dude, that shit, I mean, at times it's just straight up a bass drum just going like dun 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 dun, and it just gets so stuck in just the way it sounds, like gets so stuck in my head for the rest of the day, and it's the absolute most simple like basic thing, and I think that's super interesting and super comparable to hardcore, I guess. Like,
sure. Sometimes you can't spoil the soup by adding too many ingredients.
100%.
Like restraint is a hard
thing. And just
thing.
turn the distortion up, Just turn the fucking gain up, and you're on the right track, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here in front of like all my toys and stuff like that for when I make Confines and stuff like that, and a lot of it is, I think, is as far as any track is, or you're writing music, you're like, oh, and I can do this, and this, and just because you can, it's like, I can't do all the tricks at once. It's gonna make it just one on top of another, and that doesn't really work. So that's I think hardcore is really the same way. It's like just because you could play a solo and do these other things and all of that kind of stuff, like maybe it's just dan and na 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 na, and you're like, I'm good with that. That's hit me right in the chest. I need that, you know?
Yeah, I think sometimes like, and maybe it's just because I've been into fucking punk and hardcore since I was like 14, 15, but almost at this point in terms of like creating music, I think it's like more interesting to go in the opposite direction of trying to make it more complex. It's like what's really a challenge is how to make it as simple as possible, but but still something that is a song or like a piece of music that somebody can digest. Just make it as little as there can possibly be. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think that those are all interesting challenges to kind of pose yourself at different times as an artist, and then try and see if you can kind of come over that hurdle and stuff like that. It's the same thing for myself too. I've done that, whether it was in, you know, Primitive Weapons. I'm like, yo, I really want to sing this chorus and like sing it out, you know, and be like, whoa, I'm putting myself out there, you know, with this melody and doing stuff. And then other time, because for me, singing a little like more aggressively or screaming and stuff like that, it was kind of second nature at that point. And now I'm kind of sort of back to where I started, where I'm feeling just, you know, being heavy again and stuff. And I've been working on some new tunes with Greg from Liturgy and Mick from Krallis and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm back here now, and I love it. I'm like, oh, I haven't done this in ages, you know. And that push and pull is always really important. Getting back to just some of your aesthetics, you talked about skateboarding and stuff like that, and obviously the visual kind of impact of that. When I think about Candy too, speaking of kind of a lack of traditionalism, the look of Candy is, you know, has a wide kind of range of influences. When I look at it, I almost think it could look like some of the flyers for your shows look like 90s rave flyers or like stuff of that nature, which I appreciate. I'm like, dude, this is cool. I see that these cats are kind of pulling from different things. Who's kind of primarily kind of in the art director chair for Candy?
I'd say Zach, the singer, and I really stress and talk about the art stuff the most, and then a lot of ideas come from Zach, and then I just kind of make a lot of that stuff. We kind of just like, we'll talk about ideas and like, honestly, all day long, we're sending each other visuals, like every day. And then at a certain point, he honestly has such a good, for the stuff that's outsourced, he just knows somehow who so many fucking designers and artists are. I guess because he works for his girlfriend's clothing brand, so I guess he needs to know that shit. But there's always designers he's suggesting, and then the stuff that we make ourselves, I generally make it.
Yeah, I remember you made the flyer for the show that we did. So I was like, I wonder if Cheddar does all this by himself, or because it has an overarching kind of theme and vibe for every release and everything you guys have been doing. But it always kind of falls in this. There's no skulls are happening. Like,
yeah.
You know, photocopied, you know, kind of vibe. It's like, oh, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I feel like I'm looking at something that might, you know, is this a show that like a couple of people who are on Bank Records, is the app playing? Like, I don't know, you know. So
that is that, like, from the beginning, we like visually. I don't even know. I started getting into like electronic music around when Candy started. And I think a lot of purists will get mad at this this philosophy, but a philosophy that was right there from the beginning is that, like, all right, there's dance music, and then hardcore, what it is in 2020 for a lot of people is dance music. Like, they want to go to a show and mosh. That's what heavy music like makes them want to do. So a mosh part is really a dance part. And then I started like just kind of like looking into more shit and kind of realizing that a lot of the early electronic music, a lot of early rave stuff from the early 90s and 80s was like straight up all DIY raves where people were fucking going to jail for throwing them, and just like it just sounded a lot like hardcore and punk to me in the history. And so from that point on, it was like, okay, like visually we can pull from like rave shit and it's not gonna feel, to me, it doesn't, I think it makes sense. Like, it's just a concept, and we want to stick to that, and it's important to be consistent, you know?
I can't agree with you anymore. I mean, if you look at, especially like, in England, when you go from like, all the Factory Records bands, like, Joy Division, New Order, all that stuff, the Rudy column, a certain ratio. And then you start going into the Hacienda with the Happy Mondays and the Acid House thing. And then it starts becoming that. I mean, that's literally born out of punk, post-punk, and and then like this dance music, and then moving further with like Sasha and Digweed and stuff, where they're like literally putting out phone numbers and bumping locks and getting
exactly
their houses and stuff. I mean, if you read some of those, I think Sasha or Digweed, one of them, put out a book a lot about that time. You're like, dude, these motherfuckers are amazing. Like, they're bringing in these huge sound systems in the middle of nowhere. Like,
yeah.
And then, like, some traffic circle, like, an hour outside of London and 3,000 people show up. Like, this is fucking sick, dude.
Dude, that's the thing. It's like, it's just as raw as, like, just those experiences. And just, like, you definitely know this. Like, if you have, like, been to a fucking show or had a hand in setting it up, you know how crazy it must have been to try to make some of those things happen. And that's punk. Like, that's hardcore. Like, absolutely. Might not be like hardcore like the definition that Hatebreed set, but it is hardcore,
Yeah, and I think again it's about ethos and mentality, right? And those are
exactly
some of the things that beyond the aesthetics of music can unite maybe different folks from different kind of walks and stuff like that you can appreciate not just what they do, but the approach, sonically what they do, but like the approach to how it's done. And so I definitely, for myself, when we were putting together Vitus and stuff like that, New York City's always had that edge, right? Where you can go to a show, the show will wrap up, and then you're gonna go out afterwards, and you're gonna go like do shit. For me, it was always about like, yo, I'm gonna go out and dance. I'm gonna go to this club, and like at that time, maybe like the Rapture and like the AAS were like, are playing over the system, and like everyone's dancing, and half the people were from the show. People want to go out and kind of continue to express themselves in different ways. And you saw that, I mean, in the Lower East Side in the late 70s, mid 70s with hip hop and punk and hardcore too. So I love that energy, and I love that, people are trying to find those different energies, because at the end of the day, we're all artists and people, and we want to kind of connect, right? That's why I'm here. That's why all these folks are here making art.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
For sure. So speaking of kind of connecting kind of to different folks and shit like that, one of the things that, and I love bands that do more than just, and I don't want to say like just make music, because that's kind of, making music's hard as fuck, and everyone should understand that. And it's hard, but I do love when bands create more than themselves and around themselves, and like a little world for themselves. That's why I'm talking about the artwork and these other things.
Yeah.
But one of the things you guys did was you did a zine recently with different folks. Can you tell me about that and how that came together? Because you highlighted some cool fucking people.
Yeah, that came together because when this fucking quarantine started off, I was just depressed as fuck. Like, honestly, like I didn't have to be anywhere. I didn't have to go to the office that I work at. I didn't have to do any of that shit. I was just, the only place I had to be any day was in my living room. You know what I mean? And that's like, can be hard to deal with, even if you can make yourself productive by like working on music or whatever. So I dove like really hard into working on new Candy music. And then that became like kind of overwhelming. And I just was like, I'm so like getting drained. I would imagine it's similar to like maybe your mindset. I don't want to assume, but with doing this, but like so much of the shit I was seeing on social media was so like depressing, with like news about the pandemic, or just like, honestly, even if it like, it's just people reposting all this shit that I was like, I don't know if this shit's true. Like, you're just some random person in my feed reposting shit. And like, I'm just going to look at the verified information and like not these weird chains. And anyways, long story short, social media was really fucking bumming me out. I was really depressed, needed something to do. So I just was like, you know what? I have all these friends that are super talented. I know they're doing creative shit. So I'm going to hit them up, and I'm going to try to clog people's feed sort of for like a week with some like positive, just not even necessarily positive, just inspirational shit where you can like listen to somebody that is not talking about a pandemic and people dying, and just like maybe find some enthusiasm. Hopefully it'll be infectious. no pun intended, and you'll be able to fucking, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I think that you're right? Like this 24/7 kind of battering ram of like news and social media and stuff like that. And especially when you feel like, if you inundate yourself with that, you can, you're in, like, I saw this talk with Ian MacKay, actually. Shout out to my boy Brandon at Kickstarter who put that together. And Ian was talking about the internet, and he's like, I go in and then I jump out. It's like an aquarium. It's like a pool. And he's like, and then like, if I don't like it, I just fucking leave it alone, and it doesn't exist anymore. So sometimes I'm trying to do this sort of the same thing, right? And like, I'm like, enjoy my porch, and I'm just gonna sit on my fucking porch and try and enjoy some of the small things in life, and kind of be more present in those sort of moments. And then going kind of further with that, it's like Chris Enrique, who's one of my best friends in drums and spotlights and What's a Revolver and all this. He started this to just be communicate, just to talk, to be, you know, human with one another. And, you know, I might be putting on a show for you, but or we might be catching up at a show that you're hanging out at or whatever, right? And just to kind of continue this sort of exchange and talk about all these different things. So talk to me about a couple of the people that you highlighted in the scene.
Well, I felt the same way about the zine, and I'm glad you like kind of brought up that like human connection. I should also mention that it was kind of a selfish thing of just like wanting to catch up with some people, or like also myself get inspired and just kind of like replicate some social energy with people and have an excuse where we like needed to talk, you know. But I'm trying to think of everybody. I started with Justice, who's in Trapped Under Ice, Angel Dust. I used to be in a band with him. I used to be in Angel Dust with him. And he just probably has taught me more about music than anyone I know on planet Earth. And I was thinking about a lot about music, so I wanted to talk to him. And because his insight is invaluable, and if anyone that wants to make music, I think they should be reading that interview to see how he looks at it, honestly. And then honestly, similar feelings about Ben Cook from Young Gov, Fucked Up, and No Warning. We had just done a tour with No Warning, and we talked with him a bunch. And I mean, he's just in the last couple of years, Candy's done a few tours that Ben was on, and it's just like, this dude is so fucking talented. He's so like chill and has a really cool perspective. So there was that. Mark McCoy. I've been like diving into Youth Attack a lot. I've always liked that shit, the surface level stuff, and then I've been going deeper and deeper into just like as literally obscure as like hardcore punk gets on some of their like back catalog shit. Really fucking with that. So like maybe a year ago he did some art for us, and I just hit him. You know, we ended up like sort of having an email correspondence, and I was like, this dude's fucking outlook is super interesting in terms of music and hardcore, and that dude's been into hardcore for so fucking long.
Charles Bronson, baby.
Yeah, I know, it's fucking crazy, and he's just like so relevant, like what he's still doing. That amazed me, and I wanted to kind of like focus on that. And then Ben Cato is just like a dude I've met since moving to New York. He's a pro skater and just cool as shit. I know he loves like hardcore and punk music, so I was like, he's kind of in a different world, so I kind of want to talk to him about that, kind of that connection that you were talking about of like DIY connection between skating and punk. And I was just like, he's the perfect fit. And I also didn't want it to be all musicians that we talked to. And then Shane Moran does Happy House, this brand right here. It's fucking awesome. He's an amazing artist. I think his visual art is like fucking, it honestly pisses me off. It's so good. Cause like I try to do visual art.
One of those,
just like,
God damn it. Like,
yeah, exactly. And then he also was in Title Fight, which was and is one of my favorite bands ever. So yeah.
I think great band. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely, I love, you know, I read through it, I checked it out on like Instagram and stuff like that. And I love that the band was the platform for these other folks to kind of like bring that together. And you're giving kind of insight a little bit more into just how the band, you know, thinks and sort of operates, you know. And yeah, I love that wide range from, Justice to Mark, who's just, and he, in his own right, an amazing visual artist as well, right?
Yeah,
like,
true.
You have that category and the Youth Attack stuff, and then as a performer with, Das Oath and Charles Bronson and all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean,
he's another person that can piss you off if you think about how much shit he's done, because you're just like,
yeah, Mark's been doing a lot for a long time, and
straight up
he's good at it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, can you share some of that talent, bro? Come on.
Yeah, for sure. So, Superstar was first EP out on Relapse and stuff like that. That dropped what, like 6 months ago?
Dude, I'm the wrong person to ask. Something like that. I don't know. It dropped in the fall, so whenever that is in relation to now.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Thanks, man.
A song on a couple of mixes I made. One for Cell Labs.
I saw that. Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Terry, and to Maddie Safer from The Rapture, who runs that site as well, bringing it back to that. But yeah, really, really cool. And so I guess that was a precursor to perhaps writing a full length, or what was the initial plan before we have to, like, obviously throw it in the garbage? But was the plan to put out the EP and then record a full length?
Yeah, kind of. Pretty quickly after we finished writing Good to Feel, I jumped back into writing shit. And I kind of had a realization that, like, if we're going to do another record, like, it needs to be completely distinct from the other shit we've done. And it almost felt like it took 10 years to write Good to Feel, because 10 years of learning shit from other bands and getting there and whatever. And that was kind of like the pinnacle of that. And I wanted to keep writing, but I realized that it was going to take a lot longer to get to another LP of just, like, life experience and writing experience and all that shit. Like, we needed to make a jump from Good to Feel to the next LP, and it's going to be a long ass fucking time, which is proving to be true. And but we had some shit, which was the 2 songs on Superstar, and it was like, let's fucking show them to people. Like, yeah. And the dudes at Relapse, like, wanted to put something out with an announcement, and it was just like, I think this is a good representation of where we're at. It's not necessarily like where we're gonna be, but yeah, let's just fucking put it out. And it's just, like, kind of a cool like place marker for that time in writing music, I guess, for us.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, it feels like just like a little snapshot. Like, it's not going to be, the definitive statement, but we're kind of on our way here, and we got, like, here's a little intermezzo between these 2 big records, and then we're gonna kind of figure it out. So, besides being holed up, you're writing, you're doing your thing, whatever have you. We've been ending a lot of our interviews because Instagram is going to kick us off in a couple minutes.
Okay. My phone's going to die too, so it's great.
See, look at that. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
So we usually kind of end off with 5 records that you would want to keep during the quarantine. Or Desert Island. So give me 5 records that you'd like to hold on to.
I got to say this one because, I told myself with, like, interview type shit, I was going to stop referencing these bands because I feel like we're getting pigeonholed and referencing these bands. But I got to say Screamadelica by Primal Scream. I just listened to an interview with fucking Bobby Gillespie, and I think his mentality is like, or their mentality is, like, exactly like what we want the Candy mentality to be in a weird way. And I've been listening to that record a ton because it's just, like, fucking feels good to listen to. I don't know.
Beautiful record. I like it. Starting strong.
So I just have to say it because just got to be honest about that. Dude, I'm so bad at listing things. All right, since we're talking, like, Candy mainly, I'll say Age of Quarrel by Chromax because it's the best hardcore record there is. So
you gotta put it in.
Yeah, just if that would be my hardcore pick, I guess.
Sure, it's a great hardcore pick, bro.
Fuck.
You got to throw a Bjork record in there, bro.
I'm not going to throw a Bjork record in, honestly.
Okay.
I fucking love her. She makes amazing music, but I can't.
Your island, baby. I'm just living.
I'm tempted to put, like, an Aphex Twin record. The first one, like, Selected Volume, Ambient, whatever, 92 to whatever.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because it's just a good vibe. I want some good vibes on my island, you know?
Why not? It's a good, you know, we got, you need a couple different flavors.
For sure.
Baskin Robbins didn't become popular for one flavor, you know? We need different.
That's true. Those are the only 3 I can think of off the top of my head. That's what I'm going to say right now.
We'll take 3. Do we need that many more?
No.
We'll take 3. Well, Cheddar, I want to thank you for joining us, man. You're fucking great. It's really nice to be.
Likewise.
We've been doing, you know, these all across the board, tons of different bands and stuff like that. But it's really nice, you know, this week we've had Creeping Death, we've had you guys, we have some younger artists on, which I always appreciate. And I think there's always just different things to learn from everybody around the way. And I've gained a lot from the conversation. So thanks a lot, my man. And guys, stay tuned. Age of Quarantine. Chris is back tomorrow with Sean from Child Bite. And then on Friday, I will be with Lingua Ignota. And then we got a ton of other shit lined up. So thank you guys. And Cheddar, stay safe, all right?
Let's do another show at Vitus very soon.
And we'll do another show, but
please,
you got to write me another record.
Oh, bro. I got enough people saying that right now.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Hey, man, cheers. And thank you very much, man.
Thanks, man.
We will at 1,000% have you back, all right?
All right. Later, man.